Hi, it's nice to be back on camera for the first time this year, 2018. I made a video earlier this year with a few photos from my Christmas and New Year's holiday in Reit in Tyrol in Austria, where I stayed for 11 days in a yoga center doing yoga, taking walks, listening to lectures and a lot of other things, and it was a very nice experience. I really loved it. Now, what's the topic for today? We're going to talk about Batman and philosophy, based on this book, Batman and Philosophy, The Dark Night of the Soul, which I read a while ago. Currently I'm reading another book about Batman called Batman and Psychology, A Dark and Stormy Night, which is also very interesting. I will definitely make a video about this book also later on. Now, why do make a video about Batman and philosophy, and perhaps why write a book about it? Well, there are a lot of interesting philosophical and also psychological topics in the Batman stories. I must say I am more familiar myself with the movies than with the comics so far. I have watched, of course, the Tim Burton movies, the Joel Schumacher movies, which were not that great, and also the Christopher Nolan movies, of course, and the last movies where Batman appears. And I find this character more and more interesting, actually. I have been interested in the topic of philosophy in popular culture for some years now, perhaps for the last 10 years, since I watched the first two Spider-Man movies by Sam Raimi, which I liked a lot, and really made me think about this topic of philosophy and popular culture, because I think there are a lot of interesting philosophical topics in popular culture, in comics, in popular novels, in movies and so on. And this blend of on the surface, very simple symbols, often corresponding to archetypes, and philosophical problems and issues is very interesting and intriguing, I think, and very well worth looking into. It's like looking into philosophical topics in mythology, basically. And superheroes are a kind of a modern mythology, which has a lot to do with ancient mythology, actually. There are a lot of similarities. And now to this book. Which are the philosophical topics in there? I have chosen a few to discuss today. There are many more, and if you find this video interesting, I highly recommend you to read this book, Batman and Philosophy. Bruce Wayne made a promise to his dead parents to fight crime, and the project to which it gave birth defines him, we are told in the book. But does it make sense to promise something to someone who is already dead? Breaking this promise can hardly be bad for the dead person himself. This was an interesting discussion in the book about promise giving and about the relationship to the dead on a philosophical level. You can also discuss it also, of course, on a psychological level. But I think both of these approaches to the problem are interesting, and it made me think about our relationship to the dead. Can something that we do be bad for someone who is dead? For example, there is the issue about disturbing the graves of the dead, robbing graves and so on. We have, I think, on a surface level at least, the feeling that it's bad in a way for the dead person. But how can it be dead for the dead person, since he or she is dead already and he or she doesn't exist anymore? And this becomes even more complicated and interesting in the case, for example, of promise giving and promise keeping. Another interesting topic raised by the book is that of authenticity, which of course is a big thing in existentialism, in Sartre and Heidegger and Kierkegaard and other existentialist thinkers. Is Bruce Wayne being authentic? Is the question in the book, in the sense of being honest with oneself about what is and what is not in one's control, and taking full responsibility for the direction of one's life, and trying to make transparent the meaning and purpose of what one does. We often lose ourselves in the lifestyle and the views of the majority of people, the writers in the book claim, following Heidegger, especially other people's views on moral matters. We give up our own authentic potential to be ourselves. Others have decided about the meaning of our existence, and we just act out our part. Often we do not think or act for ourselves. Instead, we just accept what society has to say. Much of human behavior is motivated by self-deception. We are constantly fleeing from our own possibilities, our past, and the inevitability of our own death, towards what is familiar and comforting. This means living inauthentically. We want existence to be something settled, to know that we had no real choice in our failures and misfortunes. This was probably the experience of the young Bruce Wayne. But human life is constantly open to reinterpretation, according to the existentialists. Bruce's choice to risk his freedom on an impossible cause, which is to rid the world of crime, is not an escape from the reality of the world, but an affirmation of it, we are told in the book. Bruce accepts his choices in life as his own unique fate, and thus accepts the world for what it is, with its absurdity and sorrow, while remaining tolerant and compassionate. He understands his own life as being finite and limited, and he organizes his life around the mission of his own choosing. He takes responsibility for his own existence. Thus he manages to live authentically in spite of all emotional, psychological and physical challenges. Bruce wanted to give meaning to his parents' lives by ensuring that their legacy didn't die with them. He isn't just trying to defeat the evil forces of Gotham. He's trying to build something which distinguishes him, for example, from the Punisher. Bruce's parents were murdered because the state was incapable of maintaining law and order. Batman works with Jim Gordon, the police commissioner in the stories, and the Gotham Police Department to uphold or restore order in Gotham City. From time to time he breaks the law, but never to kill, except in the Frank Miller version of the stories. His ultimate enemy is chaos, and almost all of his enemies end up in Arkham Asylum, but is Bruce himself sane? This, of course, raises a question about sanity and insanity. What is sanity, what is insanity, and are these really fixed concepts? And normalcy and abnormalcy are both constructed, we are told in this book about Batman and philosophy, and they cannot exist without each other. Likewise, sanity and insanity are constructions and therefore unstable categories. Is the Joker insane, or is Batman insane, or both? The Joker is insane only according to the rules of Gotham, and Batman may have much more in common with his enemies than with so-called normal people. Both Bruce Wayne and Batman are performances. There is no true self underneath connecting them. According to Foucault, following Nietzsche, identities are products of power, like the state or society, or of power relations, like the relationship between Batman and the Joker. Our identity is constructed by following rules. The state claims the exclusive rights to enforce authority through the police and the military. The use of violence by non-state actors like terrorists, revolutionaries, common criminals, and vigilantes can never be legitimate. Batman and Jim Gordon support the state, but they reject its exclusive authority in the area of security. Gordon's sympathy for and support of Batman is a deviation from law enforcement and a dereliction of duty, since Batman violates criminals' civil rights. Gordon, however, does not place rights and the law before justice and order. The relationship between Gordon and Batman is the linkage between the just man inside the legal system and the just man outside it. Batman does not mete out punishment, and Gordon cannot rely on his police to maintain order. Being a vigilante gives a subversive role to all superheroes, except in the case of Captain America during World War II and Superman being licensed by President Reagan in The Dark Knight Returns. Batman's dark, cowled figure stands in stark contrast to Superman's maskless, bright uniform. Superman inspires hope and trust. Batman relies on fear and superstition. There is not much distance between Superman and Clark Kent. They have the same values and drives. Superman just displays more confidence. Between Bruce Wayne and Batman, the differences are much more pronounced. According to Police Commissioner Jindal in The Dark Knight The Dark Knight Returns, any other violence than that of the state is illegitimate and criminal, regardless of the results. But law and order are not perfectly correlated. Sometimes the government cannot on its own ensure order, and thus it fails at maintaining public safety. The Gotham City Police, as portrayed in Batman Year One, is a protection network for powerful elites, politicians and drug dealers, perverting order instead of establishing it. Batman shows us justice as law, peace and fair institutions. But in The Dark Knight Returns, he is trying to reorder society in his own image, and because of this he is called a social fascist. The Joker is a reaction to Batman bringing about too much order. For the Joker, order is boring and restrictive. Chaos is nonsensical, but also liberating. There is no fear and no constraints. In The Dark Knight Returns, the Joker returns from Arkham to disrupt order in Gotham City only after having learned about the return of Batman. But Batman and Gordon are perhaps even bigger threats to the state than the villains are, one of the authors in the book says, since they challenge the state's monopoly over the legitimate use of violence. The more Batman reduces crime and thus contributes to public order, the more he challenges the state, making it obvious that the state's use of violence is ineffective. These were a few of the philosophical topics found in Batman and Philosophy, The Dark Knight of the Soul. I highly recommend this book. It was very interesting and very fun to read. And I also am interested in reading more of the Batman comics now. I have, of course, read the classic by Frank Miller, The Dark Knight Returns, and also the prequel, which came, I think, a year after Batman Year One. I'm also looking forward to read The Long Halloween and No Man's Land. These are said to be the best Batman comics by a number of Batman experts, and I'm really looking forward to read these and delve further into the Batman universe and its philosophy and psychology. And as I said, I will also probably make a video about Batman and psychology, A Dark and Stormy Night, in the next few weeks. I'm reading this book currently and it's also very, very interesting. So I'm really into Batman now. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this interesting. You are welcome to leave your comments below what you thought about this video, and give me a thumbs up, of course, if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon again.